This is The Lone Man on the Ridge, Episode 14, Roanoke. The cab of the truck was quiet, not the comfortable kind. The kind that sits between two people who have something to say, but neither one is willing to go first. Rachel hadn't spoken since the checkpoint, not a word. She sat pressed against the passenger door with Lily asleep on her lap, staring out the window at nothing. Mr. Rogers lay between them on the bench seat like a furry, demilitarized zone. Jack checked his mirrors, checked the fuel gauge, checked the road, the same routine he'd been running every few minutes for the last 100 miles. The needle sat just over 1/4 of a tank. 10 gallons from Driscoll, enough to get them through Roanoke and then maybe a little bit more, if he didn't have to detour. If he didn't have to run. If nothing went sideways. He glanced at Rachel. She did not look back. Jack let out a slow breath through his nose. He'd been turning this over in his head for the last 30 miles. The checkpoint, Driscoll's test, the words that came out of his mouth without hesitation. Take the woman and child. He knew what it sounded like. He knew what she heard, and he knew that explaining it wasn't going to change what she felt in that moment, the moment she thought she was currency. Jack tried anyway. That back there, Jack said. His voice was low and even. With Driscoll, that wasn't what you think it was. Rachel didn't move, did not turn her head. She didn't even acknowledge Jack had spoken. He was testing me, Jack said, seeing what kind of man I was. I knew the answer before he finished the question. I was never going to, I don't want to talk about it. Her voice was flat, not angry, not sad, just flat. Jack looked at her for a moment longer, then back at the road. He nodded once to himself. All right. He would let it go. Jack was not the kind of man who explained himself twice. If she wanted to believe what she believed, that was her right. He couldn't unring that bell with words. Only time and action would do that, and maybe not even then. The miles clicked by. 5, 10, 15. The silence stayed, but it shifted slightly. Less hostile, more exhausted. Two people too tired to fight about something neither one of them could fix right now. A green highway sign appeared ahead. Roanoke, 22 miles. Jack's hand tightened on the wheel. Driscoll's warning played back in his head. Gangs, rogue military, what's left of a National Guard that stopped answering about 3 weeks ago. They carved the whole city up. He could not go through the middle, that much was clear. But going around meant spending fuel he might not have and traveling roads he did not know. He needed information. And the only person in this truck who might have it hadn't spoken to him in over an hour. Jack waited until 1 more mile passed. He then spoke, not to make peace, just to state a fact. We're coming up on Roanoke. I was told it's bad. Carved up, controlled. I need to know if you know anything about getting through. Silence. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. Jack didn't push it. Then Rachel shifted. She adjusted Lily's weight on her lap and stared straight ahead. Take the Wildwood exit, she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. Exit 137. Stay to the right of the ramp. Jack glanced at her. She did not look back. You know the area, Jack said. I grew up here. Jack processed that, filed it away, did not ask any more questions. She'd given him what she needed. The rest was hers to keep. Exit 137, Wildwood Road. Jack took the ramp slow, letting the truck crawl down the curve. The road opened into a 2-lane stretch lined with overgrown commercial lots. There was a fast food restaurant with a sign torn down, weeds pushing through the cracks in the parking lot. But it was not abandoned. Jack could see it immediately. Fresh tire tracks on the road, a car parked along a gas station that had not been there very long, no dust on the windshield, and ahead, maybe 150 yards off the ramp, a checkpoint. Not like Driscoll's. No Jersey barriers, no military precision. This was plywood and sandbags, and 2 vehicles parked at angles across the road. 3 men visible, maybe more behind the vehicle. All were armed, casual but alert. They appeared to be locals. Jack slowed the truck to a stop about 50 yards out. His hand moved to the Glock on his hip out of habit. Rachel sat up straight. She looked at the checkpoint, then at Jack. Something shifted in her face. Not fear, but recognition. "Stop the truck," she said. Jack looked at her. "What?" "Stop the truck. Let me out." Jack's jaw tightened. He didn't like this. Did not like any of this. But Rachel was already reaching for the door handle. She set Lily gently on the bench seat next to Mr. Rogers. The girl stirred but did not wake. Mr. Rogers sniffed her hair and settled back down. Rachel stepped out of the truck and closed the door. Jack watched her walk towards the checkpoint. Not fast, not slow, but confident. Like she'd been on this road before, like she knew exactly where she was. One of the guards stepped forward. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, shotgun across his chest. He watched Rachel approach with his hand on the grip. Then something changed. His posture relaxed. He tilted his head, said something Jack was not able to hear. Rachel spoke. The guard laughed. Not a threatening laugh, a surprised laugh. He looked past Rachel at the truck. He looked at Jack behind the wheel. He looked at Mr. Rogers in the passenger seat. His smile then faded. The guard did not like what he saw. They talked for another minute or two. The guard looked at the truck twice more. Rachel gestured once, a small motion, dismissive like she was waving off a concern. The guard nodded slowly. He stepped aside and waved at the other men. The plywood barrier shifted. Rachel walked back to the truck and climbed in. She pulled the door shut, gathered Lily back into her lap, and stared straight ahead. Jack waited, then asked, "What did you tell him?" Rachel did not look at Jack. "None of your business." Jack held the words in his mouth for a moment. Then he put the truck in gear and drove through the gap. The guards watched him pass. One of them locked eyes with Jack through the driver's window. Not much friendliness here, just tolerance. Whatever Rachel said was enough to get them through, but just barely. Jack did not look in the mirror. He just kept driving. Rachel directed him with short, clipped instructions. Take a right here. Take a left past the church. Her voice was flat, mechanical, like a GPS with no warmth behind it. The neighborhood changed as they drove deeper off the main road. Commercial gave way to residential, small houses, chain-link fences, and yards that used to be kept but were not kept anymore. Some houses were dark, some had plywood over the windows. A few had people on porches watching the truck pass with the kind of attention that said they noticed everything but trusted nothing. Just past the Motel 6, Rachel said, then take a right on Horner. Jack saw the hotel. Half of the sign was dark, the other half flickered. The parking lot had a few vehicles in it, but no movement. He turned right onto Horner, small houses, close together, trees overhanging the road. It was very quiet. There, Rachel pointed. Third house on the right, blue shutters. Jack pulled the truck to the curb and killed the engine. The house was small, single-story, vinyl siding, and a porch with a metal railing. The blue shutters were faded but intact. A garden out front had been tended recently. Tomato plants, marigolds along the walkway. Someone lived here, someone who cared about the small things. Rachel was already out of the truck. She carried Lily on her hip and walked up the concrete path without waiting for Jack. She knocked on the door. Not loud, not frantic. The knock of someone who knocked on this door 100 times before. A long pause, then the sound of the deadbolt turning. The door opened. A woman in the doorway, maybe 70 years old, small, thin, with a house coat and slippers, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked at Rachel for a long moment and did not react, like her brain needed a second to believe what her eyes were showing her. Then her hand went to her mouth. "Rachel, baby, is that you? Hey, Aunt Gladys." Gladys reached out and pulled Rachel into her arms. It wasn't a polite hug. It was the kind that comes from someone who thought they'd never see you again. Her thin arms wrapped around Rachel and Lily both, squeezing them with more strength than her frame suggested. "Oh, my baby, oh, my sweet girl. And who is this? Is this Lily? Oh, Lord, look at her. Look how big she is." Rachel's face crumbled, not into tears, but into relief. The kind of relief that only comes when you've been holding yourself together for so long that you forgot what it was like to stop. Jack stepped out and stood beside the truck. He did not approach. This wasn't his moment. Mr. Rogers sat in the cab, watching through the windshield, wagging his tail. Gladys looked past Rachel and saw Jack. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not hostile, but cautious. The way any woman her age would look at a strange man standing in the front of her house with a dog and a truck full of gear. "Who's that?" Gladys asked. Rachel wiped her face with the back of her hand. "That's Jack. He gave us a ride. He's okay." Jack raised a hand, a small wave, but nothing more. Gladys studied him for a moment longer, then nodded once. "Well, come on in then, all of you. I just made coffee. Real coffee. And I've been saving it for a special occasion." Gladys looked at the truck on the curb, her eyes narrowed again, not at Jack, but at the truck itself, and what it represented sitting out here in the open. "Pull that thing around back," she said. Her voice was very matter-of-fact. "There's a garage behind the house. Door sticks, but it opens. You don't want that thing sitting on the street overnight. Not around here." Jack nodded. She did not have to explain why. Jack pulled the truck down the narrow driveway alongside the house. The garage was small, single car, leaning slightly to one side, paint peeling off the wooden door. Jack had to yank on the handle twice before it rolled up on rusted tracks. Inside was dark, cluttered, lots of garden tools and boxes, but there was just enough room for the truck if he folded the mirrors in. He killed the engine inside the garage and put the door back down. The truck disappeared from the street. There was nothing to see. The inside of Gladys's house was warm in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. Crocheted blankets on the couch, photos on every wall, a kitchen that smelled like something had been cooked recently. Maybe beans with cornbread. A small battery-powered radio on the counter softly played static. Gladys moved slowly but deliberately. She poured coffee into mismatched mugs and set them on the kitchen table. Her hand shook slightly. A tremor that looked permanent, not situational. She wasn't in great health. Jack could see it in the way she braced herself against the counter, the way she lowered herself into the chair like her joints were negotiating every movement. Her eyes were still sharp, and her smile when she looked at Lily was the most genuine thing Jack had seen in weeks. Lily sat on the kitchen floor with the stuffed animal Gladys had produced from somewhere. A rabbit, well-loved and missing an eye. The child held it against her chest and rocked slightly, content for the first time since Jack had met her. Mr. Rogers laid in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, not relaxed, but more positioned. Mr. Rogers was watching the front door and the back door simultaneously. Jack noticed. Such a good boy. A sound from the backyard, a soft, irritated clucking. Jack glanced toward the back door. "That's Blossom. I put my 3 chickens out back when I parked the truck. Blossom, Wheezy, and Maud. They'd been literally cooped up in the truck for most of the trip. They needed to stretch their legs. Gladys laughed, a real laugh, the first one Jack had heard in so many days. You brought chickens. On the road. Lord have mercy. Rachel and Gladys talked, quietly at first, then more freely. Jack caught pieces. The church shelter in Withville, the men with rifles, the walking, the highway. Gladys listened with her hand over Rachel's, nodding, not interrupting. Gladys squeezed her hand and said, "You're here now, and that's all that matters." Jack drank his coffee and stayed quiet. He wasn't part of the conversation and didn't need to be. He was already thinking about tomorrow. The route north. What was between here and Stephen? How much fuel he had? How much road was left? Eventually, the light outside faded. Gladys insisted everyone stay the night. There was a spare room for Rachel and Lily. Jack could take the couch. Mr. Rogers could take wherever Mr. Rogers decided to sleep. Jack stepped out to check the truck in the garage one more time. He had secured the totes, covered the rifles with a blanket, and locked the cab. Everything was out of sight. Satisfied, he pulled the garage door tight. He sat on the porch steps for a while. Mr. Rogers came out and sat beside him, pressing his weight against Jack's leg. Jack put a hand on the dog's head and watched the street. For the first time in days, nothing was moving. Nothing was wrong. Just quiet. The refrigerator hummed to life in the kitchen. Jack hadn't noticed it before. A lamp on in the corner, the fridge running, and a clock on the wall with a second hand still ticking. They have electricity. You've got electricity, Jack said. It wasn't a question. Gladys set down her coffee. Sometimes. It comes and goes. Few hours a day, usually in the evening, sometimes morning, no schedule to it. Jack looked at her. From where? Gladys's expression shifted. Something careful came into her eyes. The cartel runs the grid, she said. Her voice was quieter now, not a whisper, but close to it. They've got a clatter from the backyard, one of the chickens raising hell about something, a possum maybe. Or just Blossom being Blossom. Mr. Rogers lifted his head and growled once, really low. Gladys stopped mid-sentence. She waved her hand like she was shooing a fly. Never mind all that. You don't need to worry about that tonight. Just know the lights come on when they come on. It didn't last. It was maybe 10 o'clock. Jack on the couch, boots off but within reach. Glock on the coffee table beside him. Mr. Rogers was on the floor next to the couch, asleep, but not deeply. Rachel and Lily were in the back bedroom. Gladys had gone to bed about an hour ago. Jack wasn't asleep. He was in that space between rest and alert. Eyes closed, breathing slow, but his brain was still running at idle, processing every sound. The house was settling, the refrigerator humming, a dog barking somewhere down the street. Then a vehicle. Jack's eyes opened, the sound of tires on pavement, slow, not passing through, approaching, now stopping. Mr. Rogers was already on his feet. His head was low, ears flat, that same vibration running through his body that Jack felt at every checkpoint, every threat, every wrong thing on the road. Jack sat up, he reached for the Glock and held it at his side. He moved to the window and looked through the gap in the curtains. A truck parked at the curb, engine running, 3 men getting out. The one in front was tall, lean, moving with a kind of confidence that said he owned this street, or at least he believed he did. The 2 others were behind him, much bigger, and still following. The tall one walked straight up the path towards Gladys's front door. He didn't knock. He called out. "Rachel, I know you're in there. Darnell told me you came through. Come on out. Let's talk." Jack's jaw tightened. He looked towards the hallway. Rachel was standing there in the dark. She heard it too. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "Who is that?" Jack asked, low and quiet. Rachel swallowed. "That's Alex." Jack looked at her, waited. Rachel stopped, starting again. "We used to be together before. He's not a good person, Jack." Jack nodded once. "Stay in the back with Lily. Keep the door closed." Rachel didn't move for a moment. Then she turned and disappeared down the hallway. Jack heard the bedroom door close softly. Alex called out again, louder this time. "Rachel? Don't make me stand out here. You know I don't like waiting." Jack moved to the front door. Mr. Rogers was beside him, pressing against his leg, a low growl building in his chest. Jack put his hands on the dog's head. "Not yet. Easy, boy. Easy." He opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The Glock was in his left hand, down at his side, not raised, not hidden, just present. Alex stopped on the walkway. He looked at Jack the way a man looks at something unexpected, an obstacle where there shouldn't be one. The two guys behind Alex fanned out a little bit. One had a pistol on his hip. The other had something tucked in his waistband. "Well, who the hell are you?" Alex said. "Doesn't matter," Jack said. "She doesn't want to talk to you." Alex smiled, not a warm smile, the kind that said he was used to getting what he wanted and found resistance amusing. "I wasn't talking to you, old man. I was talking to Rachel. Tell her to come out here." "She's not coming out," Jack said. Alex took a step forward. His smile did not fade, but his eyes changed. They were much harder. "You don't know me. You don't know how things work around here. Rachel and I go way back. We got history. She belongs with me." "She doesn't belong to anyone," Jack said. His voice was flat, void of emotion, just fact. Alex laughed, a short, sharp sound. He looked back at his two guys like Jack had said something funny. Then he looked at Jack again. "Listen, man, I don't know where you came from or what you think's happening here, but Rachel, she's mine. She's always been mine. We had a good thing. I took care of her, gave her everything she needed." He emphasized that last word in a way that made Jack's stomach turn. "She just needs to remember that from time to time." The front door opened behind Jack. Gladys stepped out onto the porch in her house robe and slippers. Her face was set, not scared, but tired. The tired of a woman who'd seen this exact scene play out way too many times before. "Alex," she said. Her voice was firm despite the tremor in her hands. "You go on home now. It's late. Rachel doesn't want to see you. Leave these people alone." Alex's expression shifted, something between annoyance and disrespect. "Miss Gladys, this ain't your business. This is between me and Rachel." "It's my business if you're on my porch at 10 o'clock at night scaring my family," Gladys said. She stepped forward, putting herself between Alex and the front door. "Now I said go home. I mean it." Alex's jaw tightened. He looked at Gladys, this small 70-year-old woman in slippers standing in his way. Something ugly moved behind his eyes. The mask slipped. "Move, Gladys." Gladys didn't move. She stood her ground with the quiet kind of courage that comes from decades of refusing to be pushed around. Alex's hand came up fast. Not a punch, more of a shove. An open palm against Gladys's shoulder. It was hard. Too hard for the woman her size and her age and her health. Gladys stumbled backwards, hit the porch railing, and went down. Her hip struck the wooden deck with a sound that made Jack's blood run cold. Everything happened at once. Mr. Rogers exploded off the porch. 70-some pounds of muscle and teeth launched at Alex like a missile. The dog hit him center mass, drove him backwards off the walkway and onto the ground. Alex screamed. A high, panicked sound that didn't match the tough guy who'd been standing there 5 seconds ago. Mr. Rogers had his forearm, shaking, growling, a sound that came from somewhere primal and ancient. Alex's two buddies froze. They looked at the dog, then at Jack, then at each other, then back at Alex. Neither of them reached for a weapon. That was smart. Jack stepped off the porch. The Glock was up now. not pointed at anyone specifically, but pointed at everyone generally. His voice was calm, controlled, the voice of a man who had done this before in another life. Call your boys off or don't. Either way, you're leaving, Alex. Now. Alex was on his back, trying to shield his face with his free arm while Mr. Rogers held the other one. Blood was coming through his jacket sleeve. He was yelling at the dog, yelling at Jack, yelling at his friends. Do something. Get it off me. Jack whistled once, short, sharp. Mr. Rogers released immediately. He backed up 2 steps but stayed low. Hackles still raised, teeth still showing, a continuous growl rolling out of him like an engine that had not been shut off. Alex scrambled to his feet, clutching his arm. His face was twisted in pain, twisted in humiliation, twisted in rage. His 2 friends moved to him, one on each side, but they weren't looking at Alex. They were looking at Mr. Rogers, and at Jack, and at the gun. Jack stepped forward. 1 step. That's all it took. Get off this property. Don't come back. If I see you on the street again, the dog won't be the only thing you'll need to worry about. Alex stared at Jack. His chest was heaving, blood dripping from his forearm onto the concrete. For a moment, it looked like he might say something stupid, might try something stupid. His friend shifted uncomfortably behind him. Then Alex stepped back. 1 step, then 2. He turned towards his truck, his guys falling in behind him. He got to the driver's door and stopped, and then turned towards Jack. His face was ugly with it, with humiliation, the rejection, the loss of control in front of his friends. He needed the last word, needed to leave something behind that would hurt. You can have her, Alex shouted. His voice cracked with venom. She ain't nothing but a junkie anyway. The words hung in the night air like smoke. Alex got in his truck, the door slammed, the engine revved. Tires squealed against the pavement and the truck disappeared down Horner Street, taillights shrinking into the dark. Jack stood into the yard until the sound was gone. Then he turned back to the porch. Gladys was sitting up, one hand on the railing, the other pressed against her hip. Rachel was there now. She came out when she heard Gladys fall. She was kneeling beside her aunt, hands on her shoulders, face tight with worry. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Let me see. I'm fine, baby. Gladys' voice was strained but steady. I'm just bruised. Help me up. They got Gladys to her feet and back inside. Rachel guided her to the couch, checked her hip, her shoulder, her wrist. Gladys protested the entire time. I'm fine. Stop fussing. I've taken worse falls getting out of the bathtub. Lily was crying in the back bedroom. Rachel went to her. Jack could hear her through the thin walls. Shh, baby, it's okay. We're okay. Just go back to sleep now. Jack stood in the living room. The adrenaline was fading, leaving that hollow, heavy feeling in its wake. Mr. Rogers sat at his feet, panting, looking up at Jack with his tail wagging. Once, then twice, then a 3rd time, like he was asking Jack if he had done good. Yeah, buddy, you did just fine. Thank you. Gladys looked at Jack from the couch. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. She nodded at him once. A small thing, but it said enough. Jack nodded back. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. It was different this time. Heavy, not aggressive. The knock of a big hand that didn't know his own strength. Mr. Rogers barked once, but his tail was wagging. Jack looked through the curtain. A man stood on the porch. A big man. Maybe 6'5", 280, built like a refrigerator with arms. He wore jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up over his forearms that were the size of most people's thighs. He had a shotgun in one hand hanging at his side like it weighed nothing. Jack opened the door, Glock still in his hand. The big man looked at Jack and then looked past Jack deeper into the house. Miss Gladys, are you all right in there? Gladys called from the couch. Teddy, is that you, baby? Yes, ma'am. Heard you had some trouble down here. The big man, Teddy, looked at Jack again, sized him up without hostility, more like curiosity. Are you the one that ran Alex off? Something like that, Jack said. Teddy shook his head slowly. A grin spread across his face. The kind of grin that said he was genuinely disappointed. Man, I can't believe I missed that. I've been wanting to put my hand on that boy for years. He looked down at Mr. Rogers, who was sniffing his boots. And who's this? He got to do some of the work? Most of it, Jack said. Teddy laughed, a big, deep sound that filled the porch. Good boy. Can I pet your dog? Jack politely declined and said no. He did let Mr. Rogers sniff his hand. Mr. Rogers wagged his tail. Gladys appeared in the doorway behind Jack, leaning on the frame. Teddy, you don't need to be out here. It's handled. Miss Gladys, with all due respect, I'm going to sit out on the porch tonight. Teddy straightened up and looked down the street in the direction Alex had gone. That fool might get brave enough once his arm stops bleeding and his ego starts hurting. He won't try nothing if he sees me out here. Gladys started to protest. Teddy held up a hand the size of a dinner plate. I already ate. I got my thermos. I got Loretta, a shotgun. You all get some rest, all of you. I got this. Jack looked at Teddy. Teddy looked back. The two men who didn't know each other but understood each other immediately. Jack extended his hand. Teddy took it. The grip was exactly what he expected. I appreciate it, Jack said. Teddy shrugged. I hate bullies. Always have. He settled into the porch chair, which creaked under his own weight. But it held. He set his shotgun across his knee. Y'all go on. Nothing's getting past me and Loretta tonight. Jack went back inside. He locked the front door. Rachel was in the hallway, Lily on her hip, the child's face buried into her mother's neck. Rachel looked at Jack. Not with warmth, not yet. But something had shifted. The ice had cracked, just slightly. She'd watched him step between her and the worst chapter of her life without asking a single question. Without judgment, without hesitation. She didn't say thank you. But she held his gaze for a moment longer than she had at the checkpoint. Then she turned and went back to the bedroom. Jack lay down on the couch. Mr. Rogers jumped up and settled against his legs, something he normally didn't do, but tonight felt like an exception. From the porch, Jack could hear Teddy humming something low and tuneless, the chair creaking as he shifted his weight. For the first time in a long time, Jack closed his eyes and actually slept. This has been Lone Man on the Ridge, Episode 14, Roanoke.